So, I bought this lakefront retirement dream home in Ohio, thinking I'd spend my golden years tending my late wife's memorial garden. My new neighbor had other plans. Laura, this entitled pharmaceutical sales rep with a Laura 1 vanity plate, took one look at me moving in and declared war. Complained to the HOA about my moving truck, filed noise violations for my morning coffee routine, then crossed the ultimate line. She had her contractors bulldoze Emily's entire rose garden while I was at the grocery store. 27 bushes, 15 years of love, some heirlooms from Emily's grandmother in Kentucky destroyed in one morning. The smell of diesel fuel mixed with crushed roses still haunts me. But Laura made one fatal mistake that would cost her everything. Because what she didn't know was that I'm a retired steel worker with 30 years of precision engineering experience. And when someone destroys something precious to you, sometimes you have to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. What would you have done if your neighbor bulldozed your spouse's memorial? Where are you watching from? My name is John Anderson. I'm 62, retired from 30 years at Midland Steelworks, where I ran quality control. When you spend 3 decades making sure every measurement is perfect, precision becomes part of your DNA. 18 months ago, I lost my wife Emily to cancer. We've been planning our retirement at this little lakefront place in Willowbrook Lake Estates, Ohio. Emily picked it specifically because of the mature oak trees and perfect southern exposure for her rose garden. 27 bushes, each one hand-selected from specialty catalogs. She'd spend hours out there, coffee in hand, planning which varieties to add each spring. After the funeral, I kept up that morning ritual. Every sunrise, I'd sit on our dock with my coffee, listening for the cardinal that still visits her favorite David Austin roses, the pink queen of Sweden variety she'd ordered from England. You could smell those roses from 50 feet away on a warm morning. The house next door had been empty for months until this woman moved in from Columbus. Laura Harrington, 43, pharmaceutical sales rep who talked louder on her phone about closing deals than most people talk to their kids. White BMW X7 with a vanity plate that read Laura 1 because apparently regular license plates weren't special enough. She immediately joined the HOA board and appointed herself neighborhood improvement coordinator, whatever that means. Had contractor crews at the house constantly for upgrades, always wearing designer workout clothes just to check the mail like she was heading to some country club. 3 weeks after I closed on the property, I'm having my morning coffee when I hear this rumbling sound. I look up and there's an excavator in Emily's garden, ripping out every single rose bush, 27 plants, the herb spiral Emily had arranged in a perfect Celtic knot pattern, even the little meditation bench where she'd sit and plan her day. I run over there in my bathrobe. "Ma'am, that's my property you're digging up." Laura's standing there in $200 athleisure, dismissing me like I'm some kind of pest. "Honey, that old garden was an eyesore anyway. I'm improving the whole neighborhood's property values. You should thank me." I show her my property survey. She claims the previous owner verbally agreed to let her expand for some deck project. Her contractor keeps digging while she's talking. The sound of those rose roots being torn out of the ground. Emily had babied those plants for 15 years. I call the police. Officer shows up, takes one look at this well-dressed woman versus some grief-stricken widower, and says it's a civil matter. Suggests I work it out neighborly. That night, I find Emily's garden journal. Page after page of her handwriting, planning spring plantings, noting which roses needed winter protection, sketching where she wanted to add a butterfly garden. 15 years of botanical dreams, and this woman destroyed it all in one morning to make room for a hot tub. The soil where Emily's roses grew still had that rich coffee ground smell from all the compost she'd mixed in over the years. Now it was just churned up dirt and broken pottery from her herb markers. But here's what really got me. Laura didn't just destroy the garden. She had her contractor dump the rose bushes like they were garbage. Didn't even offer them to neighbors who might want them. Just loaded 15 years of Emily's work into a dumpster and drove it to the landfill. Some of those roses came from Emily's grandmother's garden in Kentucky. Heirloom varieties you can't buy in stores. Gone. And Laura, she's already planning her deck expansion like nothing happened. talking to contractors about hot tub placement and outdoor kitchens, acting like she'd done me some kind of favor by clearing my messy garden. Little did she know, she'd just declared war on someone who'd spent 30 years making sure every measurement was perfect. And I was about to show her what precision engineering really looks like. 2 days after the garden massacre, I'm rebuilding Emily's raised beds when this county noise control officer shows up at 7:15 in the morning. Apparently, someone complained about excessive hammering disturbing the peace. The fine was $150 for violating the county's 8 a.m. noise ordinance. Except I'd been careful to start at 7:30, which should have been legal. Turns out Laura had filed 3 separate complaints using different versions of her name, her maiden name, her middle name, even her ex-husband's name, to make it look like multiple neighbors were upset. That's when my factory training kicked in. 30 years of quality control teaches you one thing. Document everything. If it's not measured and recorded, it didn't happen. I installed a complete security camera system that weekend. 4 cameras with GPS timestamps, motion detection, the works. Cost me $1,200, but I figured if Laura wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had video evidence of every move she made. The cameras caught something interesting within the first week. Laura's contractor was dumping construction debris in my compost area, bags of concrete mix, broken tiles, even paint cans. I filed a counter-complaint for illegal dumping, complete with video evidence and timestamps. But while I was reviewing that footage, I noticed something that made my blood pressure spike. Laura's new deck construction was extending way beyond what looked like her property line. Her hot tub platform was sitting entirely on what should have been my land based on the old survey stakes I could see in the video. I spent that evening digging through my property documents, cross-referencing the survey Emily and I had done before we bought the place. Those metal property pins don't lie. They're placed with GPS precision down to the inch. The next morning, I walked the property line with a tape measure. Laura's deck footprint was 23 feet onto my property. Her hot tub sitting completely on my land. This woman hadn't just destroyed Emily's garden. She'd stolen nearly 3,000 square feet of my property to build her personal spa. When I knocked on her door to discuss it, she answered wearing yoga pants that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, holding some green smoothie like she was posing for Instagram. "John, we need to discuss your attitude problem." "My attitude problem? You're being very unwelcoming to progress. This whole neighborhood needs updating and you're stuck in the past. Emily would want you to move forward, don't you think?" The smell of treated lumber from her construction mixed with diesel fumes from the contractor's truck was drowning out what was left of Emily's rose scent from my replanted garden. But it was Laura bringing up my dead wife that really set me off. "Don't you ever mention Emily again and get your hot tub off my property." "Your property? That's ridiculous. I have a deed. I have a survey." She actually laughed. "Surveys can be wrong, sweetie. Besides, I'm improving everyone's property values here. You should be grateful." "Grateful? This woman destroys my wife's memorial garden, builds her hot tub on my land, and I should be grateful." That's when I learned something interesting about property law. I'd been researching online trying to understand my options when I came across this thing called adverse possession. In Ohio, if someone uses your land openly and continuously for 21 years, they can actually claim legal ownership. But here's the key. It has to be 21 full years. Laura had been there 2 years, and the previous owner's encroachment was also illegal. Translation: when someone builds on your land without permission, time is on your side if you act fast. I called a property attorney that afternoon. Best $300 I ever spent for a consultation. Turns out, when someone builds improvements on your land without permission, you've got several options. You can demand they remove everything. You can charge them fair market rent for using your land. Or in some cases, you can claim ownership of whatever they built. The attorney's exact words were, "Mr. Anderson, you hold all the cards here." But I wasn't ready to play those cards yet. Laura had destroyed something precious to get what she wanted, acting like she was doing me a favor. If she wanted to play property games, I'd show her what happens when you mess with someone who spent 30 years making sure every measurement was perfect. I had a plan for me, but it would take time to execute properly. And first, I needed to know exactly how much of my land this woman thought she owned. A week later, Laura discovered my security cameras. She marched over at 8 o'clock in the morning, still in her designer pajamas, pointing at my property like she owned the place. "John, this surveillance situation is unacceptable. You're basically spying on my private hot tub area." "Your hot tub area is on my property, Laura." "That's absolutely false, and you know it. I'm calling the police about your stalking behavior." She actually did call them. The officer who showed up was different from the first one. Younger guy who seemed more interested in following procedure. He looked at my cameras, looked at where they were pointed, and basically told Laura that homeowners can record anything visible from their own property. But he suggested I adjust the angles to respect privacy. Professional courtesy, he called it. That's when I realized Laura was smart. Evil, but smart. She was positioning herself as the victim in every interaction, making me look like the unreasonable neighbor. Classic manipulation tactic I'd seen plenty of times during union negotiations at the steel plant. So, I hired a licensed surveyor. Cost me $800, but I needed official documentation. While we were waiting for the survey results, I did some research on Laura's property history. Public records are amazing when you know what to look for. Turns out the previous homeowner who sold to Laura never actually owned the disputed land either. The property had been illegally subdivided back in 1987 and nobody had bothered to correct the records. Laura had bought stolen property without doing proper title research. The survey results came back on a Thursday. I still remember opening that envelope in my kitchen, looking at the GPS coordinates and precise measurements. Laura's deck, hot tub, pool house, and half her driveway were on my land, not close to the line, completely over it. 2,847 square feet of encroachment. Nearly 3,000 square feet of my property she'd been using like it belonged to her. I called my attorney with the survey results. He explained something called adverse possession, how someone can legally claim land they've used openly for 21 years in Ohio. But since Laura had only been there 2 years and the previous owner's use was also illegal, she had no legal claim whatsoever. Here's the beautiful part, Mr. Anderson. The attorney said, you can force her to remove everything or you can charge her rent for using your land. Market rate for lakefront property in your area is about $2,300 a month. Translation: when someone builds on your property without permission, you can make them pay rent or make them move. Their choice. But there was something else. While I was researching Laura's property purchase, I found her divorce decree in the public records. She'd received the lake house in her settlement, but owed her ex-husband $280,000 in buyout payments over 5 years. That explained the desperation. She wasn't just being a bad neighbor. She was using my land to increase her property value for refinancing. My stolen property was collateral for her divorce debt. I decided to confront her with the survey results before involving lawyers. Professional courtesy like the police officer had suggested. Laura, we need to discuss your pool. She was floating in her hot tub that which was 100% on my property, sipping something that looked like a mojito. What about it? It's gorgeous. Adds value to the whole neighborhood. It's sitting on my property. All of it. That's ridiculous. I have a deed. I pulled out the survey. I have GPS coordinates. The look on her face when she saw those official measurements was priceless, like someone had just told her Christmas was cancelled. You could hear the pool filter humming through my bedroom wall at night. Smell the chlorine drifting across the property line, masking what was left of Emily's rose scent from the garden I was trying to rebuild. Surveys can be wrong, she finally said, but her voice had lost that confident edge. This one was done with the same GPS technology the county uses for tax assessments, accurate to within 6 inches. That night, I got a certified letter from some lawyer in Columbus threatening to sue me for defamation if I continued spreading lies about property boundaries. Laura was doubling down trying to intimidate me into backing off, but I'd been through 3 union strikes and a plant closure. Empty threats from lawyers didn't scare me. Besides, I was starting to enjoy this chess game because here's what Laura didn't understand. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. And when a quality control engineer starts calculating, somebody's about to discover just how precise real measurements can be. The next escalation came on a Tuesday morning when I discovered my truck was gone from my own driveway. Not stolen, towed. Apparently, Laura had called a towing company claiming my Ford was partially parked on HOA common area. The towing yard wanted $380 for release. When I got there, the owner showed me photos Laura had taken, claiming my rear bumper was 6" over some invisible line she'd drawn between our driveways. "Look, buddy," the tow guy said. "I just go by what the complainant tells me." She said it was illegally parked, showed me these photos, paid the tow fee up front. "You want your truck back?" "That's $380. I paid the fee and drove home angrier than I'd been since Emily's funeral. This wasn't about property lines anymore. This was systematic harassment. Laura was weaponizing every authority figure she could find. Police, noise control, towing companies, probably building inspectors. Next, that evening, I filed a formal complaint with the county prosecutor's office. Harassment, criminal trespassing, filing false police reports. I'd been documenting everything for months. Photos, videos, police reports, the illegal dumping, the bribery attempt with the surveyor I'd caught on camera. But while I was putting together the evidence package, I discovered something interesting in the HOA bylaws. See, I'd been reading through all the covenants and restrictions, looking for anything that might help my case when I found the architectural review section. Any structural improvements over a certain value require approval from the HOA Architectural Committee before construction. Laura's deck and pool project was worth at least $50,000 and she'd never requested approval. Never even submitted plans for review. I pulled the meeting minutes for the past 2 years. No mention of Laura's project anywhere. She'd been building for 18 months without HOA approval in direct violation of the covenants she'd signed when she bought the house. The penalty for unapproved construction was $100 per day until the violation was corrected. Laura had been in violation for approximately 540 days. That's $54,000 in fines plus interest. Translation: HOAs can be powerful weapons when you actually know the rules. I'd learned something about organizational politics during my union days. Rules are only as good as the people willing to enforce them. But when someone breaks multiple rules simultaneously, enforcement becomes automatic. I started spending my evenings reading county building codes, Ohio property law, and every HOA document I could find. My methodical approach from 30 years of factory quality control was becoming a strategic advantage. Measure twice, cut once, just like Emily always said. The research paid off when I discovered Laura's contractor had been moving my property survey stakes. My cameras caught them in the act. 3 guys with a truck pulling up the metal pins that marked the exact boundary corners, moving them about 4 feet onto my property to make Laura's encroachment look smaller. Tampering with survey markers is a felony in Ohio. Those pins are placed by licensed surveyors using GPS coordinates filed with the county. Moving them is like forging a deed. I confronted the workers the next morning. "Excuse me, those are legal survey markers you're moving." The crew chief looked nervous. Lady next door said they were placed wrong, asked us to fix them. Those markers were placed by a licensed surveyor and filed with the county. Moving them is a felony. They dropped the tools and left immediately. Smart guys, but the damage was done. Laura was willing to commit fraud to protect her stolen property. She wasn't just a bad neighbor anymore. She was a criminal. That night, I sat in Emily's garden with her old journal, reading her notes about dealing with difficult people. If someone won't listen to reason, she'd written, sometimes you have to speak their language. I was starting to understand what language Laura spoke. Power and consequences. She'd been used to bullying people into backing down, using lawyers and threats and official complaints to get her way. But she'd never dealt with someone who'd spent 30 years making sure every bolt was torqued to specification, every measurement was verified twice, every process was documented properly. The crunch of gravel under my boots as I walked the true property line. The metallic taste in my mouth from rising blood pressure. The smell of chlorine from her hot tub mixing with diesel fumes from her constant construction projects. It all reminded me of the stress I'd felt during the plant shutdowns. But this time was different. This time I held all the documentation. And I was about to show Laura what happens when you mess with someone who knows the difference between precise and approximate. The attorney called on a Friday morning with the official survey results. I was having my coffee on Emily's memorial bench when my phone rang. "Mr. Anderson, you need to sit down for this." Laura's hot tub, deck, pool house, and entire outdoor entertainment area were sitting on my property. Not partially, completely. 2,847 square feet of encroachment. Nearly 3,000 feet of my land she'd been using like her personal resort. The property appraiser calculated her improvements at $184,000. Every dollar of that investment was built on land she didn't own. But here's where it gets interesting. Under Ohio law, I could demand immediate removal of all structures, or I could charge her fair market rent retroactively from the day construction started. For lakefront property, that's $2,300 a month. 24 months of construction meant $55,000 in back rent plus ongoing monthly charges until she moved her stuff. There's a third option. My attorney said, you can sell her the encroached land at fair market value. Given the lake frontage, we're looking at $380,000 or more. But the real revelation came when I dug deeper into Laura's financial situation. Remember that divorce settlement I'd found in public records? She'd received the house, but owed her ex-husband $280,000 in buyout payments over 5 years. She was broke. Using my land to increase her property value for refinancing, planning to leverage her improvements to get enough cash to pay off her ex-husband. My stolen property was collateral for her divorce debt. That's when I understood her desperation. She wasn't just being entitled. She was financially trapped. Without my land, her property value dropped below what she owed on the mortgage. She'd be underwater facing foreclosure. The attorney explained something called excession doctrine. When someone builds on your land without permission, the improvements legally become your property. I could claim ownership of her entire pool complex if I wanted. Translation: build on someone else's land, lose your building. But I didn't want her pool. I wanted something else entirely. While reviewing my camera footage for the attorney, I discovered Laura was running an Airbnb operation. Her luxury lakefront estate listing charged $450 a night for private pool and hot tub experience. She'd been earning money from my land for over a year, approximately $38,000 in rental income using property she didn't own. Combined with the improvement value and back rent, Laura had stolen over $220,000 worth of my property value. But here's what really got me. In every Airbnb photo, you could see Emily's remaining rose bushes in the background. Laura was using my dead wife's garden as decoration for her illegal rental business. I realized I had complete leverage now. Laura's entire financial future depended on keeping those improvements on my land. She couldn't afford to remove them, couldn't afford to buy the land, couldn't afford to pay back rent. But instead of crushing her immediately, I decided on a different approach. Emily had always said the best lessons are the ones people teach themselves. I was going to let Laura dig her hole deeper while I prepared the perfect trap because she destroyed something precious without a second thought, acting like she was doing me a favor. Now it was time to show her what precision engineering really looks like. The idea came to me while I was rebuilding Emily's herb spiral. If Laura wanted to act like she owned my land, I'd show the entire neighborhood exactly where the property line ran with a fence. A very special fence. I started sketching in Emily's old garden journal using my engineering background from the steel plant. Hydraulic systems were part of my daily life for 30 years. Lifting heavy equipment, controlling precise movements, automated processes. Why not apply that knowledge to fence construction? The concept was elegant. A 6-foot cedar fence that could be raised from ground level to full height in 90 seconds using hydraulic cylinders controlled by a smartphone app. I called my old colleague Mike Rodriguez, a hydraulic engineer who'd retired from the same plant. Mike, how would you build a fence that rises from underground? Like a drawbridge in reverse? That's interesting. You'd need underground hydraulic cylinders, pre-built fence sections stored horizontally, and a pump system with smartphone controls. Can it be done, John? We used to lift 50-ton steel beams with hydraulic systems. A cedar fence weighs maybe 2,000 pounds. It's just scaled-down truck hydraulics. Translation: the same technology that lifts your car at the mechanic can lift a fence through someone's deck. The legal strategy was just as important as the engineering. My attorney filed a quiet title lawsuit to establish definitive ownership with a court date 6 weeks out. Perfect timing for fence installation. But first, I needed allies. Sarah Jenkins, the neighbor on my other side, had been watching Laura's harassment campaign for months. She provided video evidence of property violations, noise complaints, the illegal dumping. Turned out Laura had been threatening Sarah, too, claiming her vegetable garden was lowering property values. Chris Thompson, a local contractor who'd done work for Emily and me, owed me a favor from when I'd helped him during his divorce. He agreed to install the hydraulic system discreetly while Laura was traveling for work. The timeline was precise, like everything else I planned. Week 1, underground hydraulic lines installed during Laura's business trip to Chicago. Chris's crew worked at night, restored the landscaping perfectly by morning. Week 2, fence sections constructed and buried along the exact property line. Each section fitted with hydraulic mounting points, tested for smooth operation. Week 3, pump house disguised as a garden shed. Smartphone control system programmed and tested. The pump could raise individual fence sections or the entire line simultaneously. Week 4, full system operational. Hidden cameras monitoring for any tampering, waiting for the perfect moment to activate. Total cost $18,000 for hydraulics, $4,200 for cedar fencing, $2,500 for professional installation. Less than my monthly Social Security benefits, affordable justice. The beauty of the system was its precision. Each fence post would emerge exactly on the surveyed property line, accurate to within 6 inches. No legal ambiguity, no room for argument. The phone app was surprisingly simple. Mike programmed it with GPS verification. The fence could only be activated when my phone was within 50 feet of the property, preventing accidental triggers. Video confirmation from hidden cameras showed the fence location before activation. This is brilliant engineering, Mike said during final testing. She'll never see it coming. Emily always said, measure twice, cut once. What happens when she screams at you? She can scream at the survey stakes. I spent evenings preparing my presentation for the HOA meeting scheduled for the week after fence installation. Legal documents, survey maps, photos of the destroyed garden, evidence of illegal rentals, every piece of evidence organized like a quality control audit. The contingency planning covered every scenario. If Laura tried to damage the fence, it could be lowered for repairs and raised again. If she filed legal challenges, my attorney confirmed fence placement on my property line was 100% legal. Most importantly, the fence would emerge precisely through the center of her deck, splitting her hot tub exactly in half. Poetic justice with engineering precision. I tested the system one final time at 5 in the morning, watching the entire fence rise smoothly in 87 seconds. The cedar panels were beautiful, the hydraulic movement was silent, and the smartphone controls worked flawlessly. Laura's been so focused on decorating her stolen property, she'd never noticed industrial equipment being installed 20 feet away. The final piece of her hot tub had been delivered the same day Chris finished installing my hydraulic pumps. While she was planning her Airbnb empire on my land, I was preparing to show her the most precise property boundary demonstration in Ohio history. Emily would have loved the engineering elegance of it all. A problem solved with patience, precision, and just enough creativity to make the lesson unforgettable. Laura's desperation reached a new level when she discovered my lawsuit through court records. Her response wasn't to hire a lawyer or negotiate. She tried to bribe the surveyor. My attorney got a call from the surveying company. Laura had offered $5,000 cash to find an error in the boundary measurements, claiming there must be some mistake in the GPS coordinates. The surveyor recorded the conversation on his phone, following my attorney's advice. We now had audio evidence of attempted fraud. Laura admitting to property violations while trying to pay for false documentation. Mrs. Harrington, the surveyor had said, these coordinates are filed with the county and verified by satellite. There's no error to correct. There has to be something, Laura replied. Maybe the pins were moved over the years. Maybe we could adjust the interpretation of the boundary description. Ma'am, that would be falsifying a legal document. I'm just asking you to be flexible. $5,000 flexible. Translation: when you're caught stealing property, bribing officials only makes it worse. The county prosecutor was very interested in that recording. Attempted bribery of a public contractor is a felony, especially when combined with the survey marker tampering and harassment complaints. But Laura wasn't done digging her hole deeper. 2 nights later, my security cameras caught her sneaking onto my property at 2:47 in the morning, wearing a pink bathrobe and carrying garden shears. She was trying to cut what she thought were hydraulic lines running along the fence foundation. What she didn't realize was that Chris had installed multiple redundant connections underground. The system had backup lines running through different routes, protected by conduit and buried 3 feet deep. Watching her on the live security feed was almost sad. This pharmaceutical sales professional reduced to middle-of-the-night sabotage with gardening tools, trying to destroy equipment she didn't understand. I let her exhaust herself for 20 minutes before calling the police. Officer, I need to report property destruction and trespassing. The suspect is currently on my property with cutting tools. The patrol car arrived while Laura was still in my yard. Garden shears in hand, hydraulic fluid on her bathrobe from a small line she'd managed to nick. Ma'am, can you explain what you're doing here at 3 a.m.? He booby-trapped my property. These pipes run under my deck. I showed the officer my survey map. Officer, the pipes are on my property line. She's trespassing. Ma'am, do you have permission to be here? This is harassment. He's sabotaging my pool system. Ma'am, have you been drinking tonight? The smell of hydraulic fluid mixed with chlorine from her pool created an odd chemical cocktail in the night air. Red and blue lights from the patrol car reflected off the water still draining from her damaged hot tub line. Laura's professional composure was completely gone. The pharmaceutical sales training that had served her so well in boardrooms crumbled under stress, revealing someone desperate enough to commit crimes to protect stolen property. The officer issued citations for trespassing and attempted property destruction. More evidence for the criminal case building against her, but the real damage was to Laura's Airbnb business. Guests started canceling after neighbors posted videos of police cars in the driveway at 3 o'clock in the morning. Her rental income dropped by 60%, making her financial situation even more desperate. Within a week, she filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was stalking her with cameras and threatening her with legal action. The hearing was scheduled for the same week as the HOA meeting. Perfect timing. My attorney prepared a counter-filing with video evidence of Laura's harassment, trespassing, sabotage attempts, and bribery. We requested our own restraining order against her. Mr. Anderson, he said, she's making this very easy for us. Every action she takes provides more evidence of criminal behavior. The irony was beautiful. Laura's attempts to destroy my fence system had triggered the hydraulic safety protocols Mike had installed. When she cut the surface line, pressure sensors automatically activated the backup system. My fence was now fully operational and protected against tampering. While Laura faced multiple criminal charges and a failing rental business, I could taste that metallic adrenaline flavor every time my phone buzzed with security alerts. The sound of her heels clicking aggressively on my driveway during confrontations had become a signal that she was spiraling deeper into legal trouble. Her designer workout outfits were gradually being replaced by discount store clothing as legal bills mounted and rental income disappeared. But I wasn't ready to activate the fence yet. Laura needed to make one more mistake, one final overreach that would justify the most dramatic property boundary demonstration in Ohio history. And judging by her recent behavior, that mistake was coming soon. The night before the HOA meeting, Laura completely lost it. I was watching Netflix around 11:30 when my security system started buzzing like crazy. Motion alerts from every camera, floodlights activating, the whole system going haywire. I pulled up the live feed on my phone and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Laura was in my yard with a sledgehammer attacking what she thought was my fence control system. For 47 minutes, she hammered away at the decoy control box Chris had installed as a backup. The real controls were in my basement, but Laura was too desperate to think clearly. She was wearing sweatpants and a tank top, hair flying everywhere, swinging that sledgehammer like she was trying to demolish a building. The sound echoed across the lake. Clang, clang, clang. Probably waking up half the neighborhood. I called Mike. She's trying to destroy the fence system with a sledgehammer. Is she hitting the actual controls? No, just the decoy box you suggested. Let her finish. Every swing is another felony charge. The beautiful part was Laura's complete misunderstanding of hydraulic engineering. She thought breaking a surface control box would disable the entire system, like unplugging a television. What she actually accomplished was triggering the pressure release that Mike had wired to the decoy box. When the sledgehammer finally cracked the housing, it sent an activation signal to the main hydraulic system. At 3:24 in the morning, my 6-foot cedar fence started rising from the ground like something out of a movie. Laura was standing about 10 feet away when the first fence post emerged through her deck. Then another, until the entire property line was marked by 6 feet of beautiful cedar fencing. The hydraulic system worked exactly as designed. 90 seconds from start to finish, smooth as silk, splitting Laura's deck and hot tub perfectly in half. 400 gallons of hot tub water came cascading across both properties, carrying her floating pool lights, drink holders, and pool noodles like some kind of chlorinated tsunami. Laura just stood there in the flood, sledgehammer in her hands, watching her $15,000 hot tub drain through the fence post that had emerged through its center. I called the police. Officer, I need to report property destruction and criminal trespassing. Also, there's been a plumbing malfunction next door. The patrol car arrived to find Laura standing in her flooded yard holding a sledgehammer with a fence growing up through her deck like some kind of wooden forest. Ma'am, can you explain the sledgehammer? He booby-trapped my property. The fence came out of nowhere. I showed the officer my survey map and building permits. Officer, the fence is on my property line. Here's the documentation. Ma'am, have you been drinking tonight? Multiple neighbors had woken up from the commotion. Sarah Jenkins was filming from her bedroom window. The Johnsons from across the street were on their front porch in bathrows. Even old Mr. Wilson was outside taking pictures. Cell phone videos of Laura's 3 a.m. meltdown started appearing on social media within minutes. Woman attacks fence with hammer. Fence fights back became the neighborhood's viral moment. The fence posts emerging through the hot tub created this perfect visual demonstration of property boundaries. No surveys needed, no legal arguments, just 6 feet of cedar marking exactly where my land ended and Laura's began. The smell of chlorinated water mixing with night-blooming jasmine. The sound of rushing water drowning out Laura screaming. The sight of fence posts standing like wooden soldiers through her expensive deck. It was the most satisfying property dispute resolution in Ohio history. This is insane, Laura screamed at the officer. Fences don't just grow out of the ground. Ma'am, it appears this gentleman installed a fence on his own property. You're the one with the sledgehammer. The hot tub damage, deck structural issues, and flooded landscaping added up to about $35,000 in immediate repairs. Laura's insurance wouldn't cover acts of war between neighbors. Her pharmaceutical sales training completely crumbled under stress. The professional facade she'd maintained for 2 years disappeared, revealing someone desperate enough to destroy property with hand tools at 3 o'clock in the morning. By sunrise, Laura was facing charges for criminal trespassing, attempted destruction of property, and disturbing the peace. The sledgehammer attack provided perfect evidence for my restraining order hearing. But more importantly, the fence activation had created the most dramatic visual aid for the HOA meeting I could have imagined. No PowerPoint presentation needed. Just point to the fence posts growing through her deck. The neighbor videos went viral locally, making John an inadvertent folk hero. Engineering revenge at its finest. One comment read, "This is what happens when you mess with someone who actually knows what property lines mean." 18 hours later, we had our HOA meeting. And for the first time in the entire conflict, I was looking forward to public speaking. The Willowbrook Lake Estates Community Center hadn't seen a crowd like this since the tornado warning of 2019. 43 residents packed into a room designed for 20-plus Channel 12's news crew after someone leaked the fence videos to social media. I arrived 15 minutes early and took a seat in the front row. Through the windows, you could see my fence standing proudly through the center of Laura's deck. Fence posts emerging from her hot tub like wooden monuments to precision engineering. The local news reporter was interviewing neighbors in the parking lot. "Have you ever seen anything like this fence situation?" she asked Sarah Jenkins. "In 30 years of living here, I've never seen such a perfect solution to a property dispute," Sarah replied. John did everything by the book. Laura arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a wrinkled business suit and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The confident pharmaceutical sales rep replaced by someone clearly in crisis. HOA President Mark Stevens called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the fence situation between properties at 247 and 249 Lakeshore Drive." Laura immediately stood up. "John has destroyed my property with some kind of mechanical trap. This is property terrorism." The murmur from the crowd was immediate. 43 people all turning to look at the fence visible through the windows, then back at Laura, then at me. "Mrs. Harrington," Stevens said, "please take your seat, Mr. Anderson. Would you like to present your side?" I walked to the front of the room with my presentation folder and laptop. "Thank you, Mark. I think the fence speaks for itself, but let me provide some context." I started with the aerial photo showing Laura's encroachment. 2,847 square feet of my property occupied by her pool, deck, and hot tub. This is the official county survey completed 3 weeks ago. Every improvement on Mrs. Harrington's property that was damaged by my fence was built on my land without permission. Gasps from the audience, phones coming out to record. But that's not the whole story. I clicked to the next slide. Mrs. Harrington has been operating an illegal Airbnb business using my property. The Airbnb screenshots filled the projector screen. Luxury lakefront estate, $450 a night, private pool and hot tub experience, all on my land. The crowd was getting restless. People starting to mutter, "No way. And are you serious?" Laura jumped up again. "That's completely legal. This is harassment." "Mrs. Harrington," I said calmly. "You've earned approximately $38,000 renting my property to strangers." That's when Sheriff Deputy Gonzalez stood up from the back of the room. I'd asked him to attend as a witness. "Ma'am, we also have video evidence of your attempted bribery of a county surveyor and your property destruction at 3 a.m. this morning." The room went dead silent. The news reporter stepped forward. "Mrs. Harrington, do you own the land your pool sits on?" Laura looked around the room like a cornered animal. This is complicated property law. The boundaries were never properly." "The answer is no," I said. "She doesn't." "Mr. Anderson," the reporter continued. "Why a hydraulic fence? Sometimes you need a clear boundary people can't argue with." That got a laugh from the crowd. Even Mark Stevens was trying not to smile. I clicked to the final slide. Photos of Emily's destroyed memorial garden before and after Laura's construction. 2 years ago, Mrs. Harrington's contractor destroyed my late wife's memorial garden to make room for a hot tub. 27 rose bushes, 15 years of careful cultivation, gone in one morning. The room was completely quiet now. You could hear the building's air conditioning humming. Cars passing on Lakeshore Drive. The distant sound of my fence's hydraulic pump cycling through its maintenance routine. Every rose bush in that garden was planted by my wife Emily. Some were heirlooms from her grandmother's garden in Kentucky. She planned each variety for color, fragrance, bloom timing. It was her life's work. I could see people in the audience getting emotional. Mrs. Ellis was wiping her eyes. When someone destroys something precious and acts like they're doing you a favor, sometimes you have to speak their language. Mrs. Harrington's language is property values and legal consequences. The building inspector stood up. Mr. Anderson's fence is exactly on the surveyed property line. Every post legally positioned. Mrs. Harrington's structures clearly violate the boundary. Deputy Gonzalez read the criminal charges. Attempted bribery, property destruction, criminal trespassing, harassment. Laura stormed toward the exit. This isn't over. I'm suing everyone in this room. The door slammed behind her, leaving 43 residents staring at each other in stunned silence. Well, Mark Stevens finally said, I think we have a clear resolution here. The vote was unanimous. Laura had 90 days to remove all structures from my property or face additional HOA fines. Outside, my fence stood 6 feet tall in the floodlights, marking the boundary with perfect precision. Justice engineered to specification. 3 months later, Laura's attorney called with a settlement offer. She wanted to avoid criminal trial and the public humiliation of a courtroom fight she couldn't win. The final agreement was beautiful in its precision. $55,200 for retroactive land use. 24 months of rent for using my property. $18,000 reimbursement for my fence system costs. $12,000 compensation for destroying Emily's memorial garden. Plus a written apology published in the HOA newsletter. Total settlement $85,200. But more importantly, Laura had 90 days to remove all structures from my land or pay fair market value to purchase it. $380,000 for nearly 3,000 feet of lakefront property. She chose removal. Watching her contractors relocate that pool was almost therapeutic. They had to drain it completely, cut it into sections, and rebuild it entirely on her actual property. The deck required demolition and reconstruction. Even her outdoor kitchen had to move. Cost to relocate everything, $89,000, more than her entire settlement payment. The county court granted my restraining order permanently. Laura was banned from my property and required to communicate only through attorneys. The criminal charges were dropped in exchange for her settlement, but the conviction for harassment remained on her record. Most satisfying was the binding agreement requiring a professional survey before any future modifications. The HOA covenant was amended to prevent similar disputes, requiring survey verification for all major improvements. I used the settlement money exactly as Emily would have wanted. The Emily's Memorial Garden Fund now provides landscaping grants for elderly residents who can't maintain their yards. 23 neighbors have received help in the past 6 months. Emily's garden is more beautiful than ever, protected by crystal clear our property boundaries. I replanted all 27 roses, including those rare Queen of Sweden varieties she'd ordered from England. The cardinal still visits every morning. My hydraulic fence has become a neighborhood attraction. Engineering students from the local community college visit to study the system. I've received inquiries about custom installations from across the Midwest, but the real victory was community recognition. Neighbors who initially supported Laura realized the importance of respecting property rights and not enabling bullies. Mrs. Ellis brought me homemade cookies. John, we should have supported you from the beginning. What Laura did to Emily's garden was unforgivable. Chris Thompson featured my fence in Backyard Engineering magazine. The article included technical specifications and legal considerations for homeowners facing similar disputes. 6 months later, Laura sold her house at a loss to cover legal bills and relocation costs. The new owners are lovely, a retired teacher and her husband, who actually asked permission before planting flowers near the property line. I kept one memento from the whole ordeal, the sledgehammer Laura used to attack my fence. It sits in my garage as a reminder that precision engineering beats brute force every time. The Emily's Memorial Garden Fund has helped 29 families restore their landscaping. We partner with master gardeners to provide free workshops on soil preparation, plant selection, and organic pest control. My phone buzzes occasionally with messages from Mike Rodriguez's relatives facing their own HOA problems. Apparently, there's a whole network of property bullies who think other people's land belongs to them, but that's a story for another day. Every morning, I still have my coffee on Emily's memorial bench, watching sunrise over Willowbrook Lake. My hydraulic fence stands ready, 6 feet of cedar marking the boundary with mechanical precision. The roses bloom magnificently, protected by property lines that can't be argued with or manipulated. If you've survived your own HOA nightmare or property dispute, share your story in the comments below and hit that subscribe button, because apparently there's a whole underground network of Karens who think other people's property belongs to them and somebody needs to document their downfall. The sound of my fence's weekly maintenance cycle has become as familiar as the Cardinals' morning song. Every Sunday, hydraulic pumps test the system, ensuring Emily's garden remains protected by the most famous property boundary in Ohio. Some problems require patience, precision, and just enough engineering to make the lesson unforgettable. Emily always said, measure twice, cut once, but sometimes you need a fence that measures itself. Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.